Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. I'm Jersey Rick, and this is my co-host, Emily.
Hi, welcome back to our listeners. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Today, we are at episode number 19. Are there monsters in your organization? And I bet there probably are, and they may not be waiting underneath the desk or hiding in the locker to jump out at you. But before we get into that, just so everybody knows, for those who have listened, we thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
We appreciate you tuning in. And for those who haven't listened, Emily and I talk about all things related to leadership. And you do not have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick.
Yeah, I'm not a fireman.
No, you're not. And not too long ago, I met a lady at a business conference. Her name is Yolanda, and she's doing leadership training in the education space. And we had a nice conversation with each other, and she really phrased it very well, is that leadership crosses all bounds. So why do I call this Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick? Because I was a firefighter for 37 years. I've been around the fire service before that, and even after I retired from the fire department. And I'm originally from Jersey. So that's why it is Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. Now, for those...
And also, I'd like to interject. It's because you would go around the firehouses and you would sit down at the table and have a cup of coffee with the guys. And you guys would just talk about anything under the sun. That's really where it came from, because what our intention of this podcast is to just have a conversation with you.
Yes.
Like if you pretending like you were having a cup of coffee with us.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Emily. For those who are listening, you can't see this, but for those who are on the camera, this is my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development. And the subtitle is How to Mold Integrity and Character in Today's World. And I'm not sure if that actually recorded where it reads normal, but at any rate, you can get my book off of Amazon in print format, ebook format, and it's also there from the Audible format as well. But keeping with what is coming up here on October 31st, Chapter 3 in my book is called Inheriting an Organizational Monster. So next Thursday is Halloween, October 31st. And frankly, it's a day that Emily and I really do not care for.
No.
And yeah, we just don't like the idea that so many people around the world pay homage to such a holiday like that, in the evil underpinnings that it has.
Yeah, and there's just more and more like yard decorations with like hideous ghouls and monsters adorning people's property, and even on like Food Network, just like the goriness of the baking. Like I just want to watch a baking show for the baking, not all the goriness. Like, ugh.
Yeah, and this is not what we're going to be talking about, but just to add on to that, we have observed over the years that these yard decorations have become, much more hideous, much more hideous. So, Emily, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, we are going to be talking about, ready, dun, 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 monsters lurking in every organization, and that is what we are talking about today.
So,
the monsters in your organization.
Yes, sorry to cut you off there, but who are these monsters?
Yeah, so in the Bible, Matthew 7:15, and Jesus says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves."
Yes, and that certainly applies to the people that we are talking about today. Why did I include a chapter on inheriting an organizational monster? Well, folks, when I was promoted to battalion chief in my fire department, I inherited one, and I'm not going to go into names or details with that, but it was certainly a leadership challenge for me. I do believe that dealing with that right out the gate as a brand new battalion chief made me a better leader because I learned quite a bit about working with people and then also coordinating my efforts with the operations chief and the human resources department. But these organizational monsters, many, many times, they are just smooth talking, suave individuals. They know what to say and they know how to act in an interview. And
They can be very like charismatic
yes, yeah,
personality.
yeah, you're right. Very charismatic, yes.
Mhm.
And they know what to say. They're very polished
Yeah.
individuals. And they're most likely already having problems in the organization that they're currently serving with. They are the quintessential Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Mm. And also, a flawed hiring process can allow these people to slip through.
Yeah, so what do we mean by a flawed hiring process? Well, it does start out with the fact of what we just mentioned is they're suave individuals. They know what to say, they know how to act,
Mhm.
and they know the show to put on. And they try, or I really shouldn't say try. Gary Barnes will jump on me for that one, my business coach. They work very hard at determining, well, what does the interview panel want to hear?
Mm.
Not what is truly in them. So that flawed hiring process may not include the type of questions that really dig into a person's character, because that's where this thing comes down to. It is their character. They
Yep.
have character flaws. And man, when they come in and they're smiling, hi, yeah, nice to meet everybody here. Thank you for the opportunity to bring me in here,
Mhm.
oh, this is just so great. And they woo everybody. And in our case, it would be two interview panels, the initial panel, and then there's a Chiefs panel after that. And when they get hired, off to academy they go, and they know that there's a probationary period. For us, it was a 1 year probationary period, and they were at-will employees,
Yeah.
meaning that the process to terminate them is a lot shorter than it will be once they come off of their process, or excuse me, once they come off their probationary period. That's when you really start to see the changes, Emily,
Yeah.
is when they finish that probationary period. Now, I know some people who are listening to this, your business, your organization may not have a probationary period. And so I guarantee, you know, it may be, depending on the person, it may really become a lot more difficult now to deal with them and get rid of them.
Yeah, because then you have to like fire them with cause,
Hmm.
whereas the probation period, you can fire them without cause.
Yeah, at will.
Or at will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not necessarily, yeah, because you have to have a cause, but you
That's
can,
right.
it's
Yeah.
they're at will employees.
Yeah. So, how do these monsters thrive during probation, and how does their underlying character remain hidden?
They're good actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
they,
thinking of a particular person right now. And
yeah, and
yeah.
I've got another one, yeah, from an organization that you
Yeah.
worked at before, and I've got
Yeah.
I've got one going through my mind as well. They're very good actors. They're
Hmm.
polished individuals. They've practiced their skill of deceiving people, but they've had these inherent character flaws most of their life, really all of their life, because when you look at it, character is formed when a child is 3 to 5
Hmm.
years old.
Yeah.
What I have seen with these type of people also with these organizational monsters is they are extremely selfish
Mm.
individuals. It's about them, not anybody else. They use people.
Yeah.
And so they've got this thing perfected, and they're hiding until that probationary period is over with. And let me tell you something else too about these people. The ones that they're with, especially once they get promoted and their subordinates see what's going on. But many, many times the people further up the chain of command don't.
They're duped.
They're duped, and they're duped because, the
Hmm.
monster knows how to act in front of them, and the monster knows how to intimidate the employees
Yeah.
and make them fearful that there's going to be retaliation. And now somebody's like, oh, you can't retaliate in the workplace. Well, baloney. It occurs all the time.
Yeah.
It takes place all the time out there. And the people who are really good at this, they know how to retaliate and cover their tracks. So it's hard for HR or anyone else in the organization to track it down. And so
Yeah.
it just continues. So that's how they thrive, in the organization. And also, uh, Emily, I want to add that we're not talking about the good employees here. Not at all.
Yeah.
Most places do have good employees, but these ones here, these organizational monsters that we're talking about, they are in a small percentage.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what role does management play in fostering these toxic individuals?
Oh, you're so great. You're the best. I wish we had more employees
Ugh.
like you. And it's because, the monsters, they know what to do. They got their lips attached to the boss's rear end and they know how to smooth talk them. Everybody else in the organization is saying, man alive.
Yeah.
What in the world? What does the monster have over, these people in the chain of command?
Yeah.
You know, are they, intimidating them in some way, bribing them? And so, those are the type of rumors that get going, folks. And I know because I've been out in the firehouses, I've worked in the firehouses, and I know the kind of rumors that get going. And for people who aren't in the fire department, if you don't think that that type of stuff is going on where you work, well, you're wrong because your employees down there on the manufacturing floor, they see what's going on and they see how the organizational monster is kissing the boss's rear end.
Yep.
And, many, many times they appear to be the fair-haired golden child.
Hmm.
And so then fear comes into play as well. There's lots of times people who are, and I'm hesitant to say leadership positions because leaders deal with the organizational monsters. But the management people, they are very, very hesitant to deal with the problem child because it
Yeah.
boils down to one word that nobody likes: confrontation. Or
Hmm.
someone will say, well, if we deal with them, they're going to go get a lawyer. And so consequently, the management team backs off and they let this thing go.
Yeah.
And so that's what's taking place there, Emily.
I think it could sometimes be the case too, where the manager has hired this person. And so then the manager has to humble themselves and
Mhm.
admit that they made a mistake and were duped hiring that person. So a lot of times it comes down to like a pride issue as
Right.
well, which is something I experienced.
Yes, you did experience that. And you're absolutely right. There are people who do the hiring that they don't want to admit, uh-oh, we screwed this thing up. I
Mhm.
screwed this thing up. I was duped
Yeah.
by this individual. Well, you know what? We're just going to continue to protect them right
Yeah.
now, and because I don't want to look bad in front of my bosses.
Yep.
And so it just continues to fester.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do these monsters and ghouls impact other employees in the organization? I mean, I could just interject for this,
Absolutely.
thinking of my example, is that it really affects morale
Hmm.
um, and the employees, and especially if it's a manager who is the organizational monster and is trying to control and put that fear in their employees. Like they're afraid to speak up because they know that the bigger boss is not going to do anything.
Yeah, you've hit the key one right there, Emily. You've experienced that. I have experienced that. And I want to also interject at this point as well. Usually there's not a job performance issue at the task level. A
Yeah,
lot of these people can perform their job.
they're really good at it.
Yeah, they can be very, very good at their job at that task level. We are talking about behavior issues, and we must separate these two out. You can have a very good employee who's no problems from a behavior standpoint, but they're struggling from a task level.
Mm-hmm.
But you can train for that.
Yeah.
We can train people for tasks. We could train them how to operate a computer. You could train them how to operate a machine. We could train them how to put up ladders. It's the character issues that we are talking about right here.
And you can't train that.
And you can't train that. You absolutely cannot train that. And looking around what's taking place in our society today, the parents that do not control or discipline their kids, and then that carries on, and some of the nonsense that's taking place in the public schools. And then people get hired into a business or into a fire department, a police department, and they've already got character issues. And if those things are not weeded out in the interview process, those character issues now are embedded in the organization.
Mm,
And it does impact the morale, especially like you said, when the people who are supposed to be dealing with it don't. They don't deal with it, and then everybody else sees it.
yeah.
Hey, listen, and I used to say three modes of communication in the fire service: telephone, telegraph, telefireman. Yeah, things get around. And again, for people who aren't in the fire service, if you think that the rumor mill's not cranked up in your business or your organization, you're just a plain out fool. You got your head stuck in the sand because people see what's going on.
Yeah.
And it impacts morale. And then your good employees will start to say, why am I knocking myself out for this place when they won't deal with Joe Schmuckatelli over there?
Mm-hmm.
Joe Schmuckatelli gets away with everything. And he's poisoning. She's poisoning. In that case, it's Betty Schmuckatelli. They're poisoning the organization. They're poisoning the employees. And then people start to leave. And then the people at the top and the management chain say, why people are leaving? And somebody say, well, they're just not getting paid enough. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the real reason.
Yeah, that is definitely, not the real reason
Yeah.
at all. So, those are the big things on how employees are being impacted. But it goes beyond the walls of the organization. It goes beyond the walls of the business. And Emily and I are familiar with a local establishment in our area
Mm-hmm.
that where the management team is terribly, terribly treating employees. And as of this recording, this particular business hasn't even been open 3 weeks. And there's been a flood of people
Yeah.
employees going out the front door. There's been customers who have waited at least 20 minutes to be served to get their food. And it's like, this does not work, folks. So
Yeah.
it's not just internal, it flows external as well. When you have disgruntled employees,
Yeah.
that carries over.
Yeah.
Anything else there to add about that, Emily?
I think you've covered it, just with the long-term consequences for sure. So, what role does leadership play in eliminating these blood-sucking monsters? I have to say, I kind of like the little like Halloween twist you're making on this for the organizational monsters.
Yeah,
I love to do a play on words.
and just for clarity, Emily had asked a question previously, what role does management play in fostering
Mm-hmm.
these toxic individuals? This question is, what role does leadership play in eliminating the blood-sucking monsters? Hey, people, I know lots of times management and leadership, is used back and forth for the same thing, but it really isn't. Management has to do with systems and processes and things. Leadership has to deal with people and exerting a positive, and not manipulating,
Yeah.
but exerting a positive influence on them to accomplish the work, to accomplish the mission, to accomplish the task.
And we
So
touched on that in a previous podcast episode. I don't remember which one, but I know it was like early on.
yeah, it was
Our
early.
listeners want to go back and listen.
It was early on, I think episode 1 or episode 2, where we really delved into the differences between management and leadership. So leadership will address these issues. A true leader will recognize what's going on. A true leader will root out what is happening in the lower levels and find out what is going on. And then that true leader will take the necessary steps to correct it. And it doesn't always mean that, hey, Joe or Betty Schmuckatelli are going to get their rear ends canned. There does have to be due process that is taking place. So that's where leadership comes into play, Emily.
So it is always necessary to drive a stake through the heart of the vampire, shoot a silver bullet into the heart of the werewolf. Or can people change? That is the $1 million question.
Yes, it is.
Can people change? So a great example of someone changing is in the Bible, and it's Saul of Tarsus. And in Acts 9:5, it says, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads.
Yes, and folks, the goats are little prickly things, and sometimes you step on them when you're out in the field, and if you're not wearing a shoe, it'll get stuck in your foot, and they hurt. So after that encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, Saul became Paul, and he was a changed man. And he went on to become one of, if not the most influential missionary for Jesus Christ. And he authored a number of books in the New Testament. People can change. I've heard others out there say people never change. Well, that's baloney. I've changed. My life has changed. And as the date of this recording, September 25th, this is the day that I trusted Christ as my Savior in a firehouse at Lowry Air Force Base in 1981. And God changed my life. So people, they can change.
They can. I think it depends on the heart.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So is there a difference between a challenging employee and a monster?
Yes. Yeah. The challenging employee, that could be the person who questions everything. I mean, they're not doing it out of ill intent. They just may be curious in nature. I'm thinking of an individual that came from a science background, and in the field that he was in, there was questions. What's causing this? Why does this happen here? So forth and so on like that. And, that questioning is just inherent in their personality, and it's been reinforced because of the career field that they came out of. In those type of situations, that's where, the leadership needs to step in and teach them how to properly ask questions. Because just because somebody's asking a question does not mean that they're challenging the leadership. Challenging employees can also come into play from those high achievers. How, they could be challenging to the leadership. I had that issue as a battalion chief. I had several people that were high achievers or very intelligent individuals. And so my challenge is, what did I need to do to propel them forward, to inspire them? A challenging employee could be the one who sees what's taking place with Joe Schmuckatelli or Betty Schmuckatelli and starts asking those questions. How come you people let this go? And then too often, that person who's asking those questions gets targeted rather than Joe or Betty Schmuckatelli. So that's the difference between a challenging employee and an organizational monster.
Yeah. So when someone is dealing with an organizational monster, what about them documenting?
Are you talking about the supervisor doing the documentation?
I guess, I mean, I don't know, would it be the supervisor and or the other employee who's going to go to the supervisor about the.
Documentation is good. Recording, when I say recording, I'm talking about writing down this happened, this event happened on this date at this time. This is how the organizational monster, treated me. This is what he or she did to me, that type of thing. But in this particular case here for the supervisor, write things down. Take notes and watch for the trends. And you have an obligation. We have an obligation to confront Joe Schmuckatelli about what is taking place. I have been ambushed before in evaluations, and that's a cowardly way to do things, people. If you've got an issue with an employee, let them know about it ahead of time. And if they have corrected it, then that's what needs to be documented in the evaluation. But if you think you don't have the backbone, you don't have the guts, you don't have the intestinal fortitude to say something ahead of time, and you're waiting to put it in the evaluation, and then you just whip that out on them, well, it's going to be a whole lot harder in the end. I always told the officers who are working for me is do not ambush any of the firefighters or driver operators that are working for you. If there's an issue, address it head time. I said the only surprises that they should see in that evaluation are good surprises. But that documentation needs to be short and succinct and address what has occurred. And something else too, don't, when somebody has done something 10 years ago and it's been corrected and you're resurrecting that and you're bringing that back, man, that's a cheap shot. That's just a really cheap shot. So have the courage. Have the courage to sit down with those employees and address the things ahead of time. And if you're in an organization that has human resources, make sure you're involving them as well. And you don't need to write long war and peace narratives over this. So anything else, Emily, as we wrap this up?
No, I think that's great episode that we just had.
Okay, yes. So again, folks, those organizational monsters, they are lurking out there, and they may just be in your organization. And the larger the organization, I guarantee that they are there. So, hey, listen, we thank you for tuning in today. If you found this episode to be useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Also, visit my website at www.fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. The link is in the show notes to learn more about the services I offer. And on my website, you can also visit my weekly blog, and you can find me on LinkedIn, where I also post my blog on a weekly basis. So thanks again for joining us.
Bye.